and welcome back to In the Books. We are a period drama podcast hosted by us two period drama loving dorks.
I'm Michelle. You can find me at Musings on Instagram and Twitter.
I'm Rita. You can find me at Annoying Rita on Instagram and Twitter if I can ever bring myself to go to the X app.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way, man.
Yeah.
I resisted updating my app for as long as I possibly could so that I wouldn't have to see that stupid name on there.
Woke up one day and it was on my phone and I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's like, what the actual hell? Yeah. Anyway. Thanks, Elon. Anyhow, welcome to our first ever commissioned podcast. Before we dive into the podcast, we want to say a very big thank you to Delia for pointing us towards this show. Woohoo! It's been great to break out from our usual European costume drama confines and think about a period of history that is often overlooked here in the West. If you want to commission a podcast about any period drama, we have a link in the show notes to our Buy Me a Coffee page where we have a commission section.
Okay, just to be very clear, this is an 8-episode season and we'll only be discussing the first 4 in this week's podcast because my brain couldn't handle trying to fit this all into one pod.
Yeah.
So expect a part 2 next week. I mean, thank God there's so much. Okay, let's talk about Pachinko. Despite its very Korean cast, it's actually an American television series created by Soo Hugh, a Korean-American producer, and it's based on the 2017 novel by Min Jin Lee. Again, I'm like, how can I fuck up another language on this podcast?
Well, we're going to do our best, man. So just bear with us. We'll do our best.
Apologies to anyone who can tell what shit. Also, so Min Jin Lee is also a Korean American that grew up in Queens. And this show premiered on Apple TV Plus on March 25th, 2022 for an American audience. I think as we talk about some of the themes in the show, it's important for us to remember that the book was written in English for an American audience and the show is produced by Americans, basically for Americans, which makes it a distinctive oddity in Korean drama territory. But I think about what Bong Joon-ho said about making Parasite, that when he was creating the film, he felt that it was a distinctly Korean film with all the socio-political themes that would only resonate with that particular market. But then he realized as the film went on to win all those awards that it resonated with a worldwide audience because after all, we all live under capitalism. So I think these American Koreans have created this show to pass through their own experiences as part of the greater Korean diaspora, and those themes are universal, like discrimination, assimilation, capitalism versus collectivism, as we're just starting to see with the Isaac character. And then, of course, imperialism and your classic sexism.
Oh, yeah.
So these things are not unique to any culture, and they manifest for Western Americans and Europeans like me in different ways, but the feelings, I think, are universal. So anyway, that was my hard sell for anyone who hasn't watched this show yet and was listening to this podcast anyway. Like, A, that's weird. But B, this show might be more for you than you think. It absolutely is. Anyway, let's start with a quote-unquote brief overview of the first 4 episodes.
Okay,
For me, it's brief. Okay.
So for episode 1, we start in 1915 in Yeongdo, Korea, where Yeonjin goes to a shaman who begs to, quote, lift the curse, end quote, on her so that she can have a healthy child. She has had 2 sons that have died so far, and she's pregnant with her 3rd child. Well, she has a healthy child, and years later, we meet Sunja, who is bright and sweet little girl. Sunja befriends a fisherman lodger in her parents' house, but that fisherman gets drunk and expresses very violent anti-Japanese sentiments, which gets him killed, pretty much. Yeah, Sunja's father falls ill and dies. 9 years after his death, a 16-year-old Sunja goes to the local fish market where she locks eyes with Hansu, the market's new fish broker.
And that's where the shit begins.
Yep. So, fast forward to 1989 in New York City. Solomon, I'm guessing that he's a banker or something. Anyway,
some business nonsense.
Yeah. He attends a meeting with 2 of his white managers who inform him that despite his stellar performance, he won't be making it to VP. Solomon boldly proposes that he be sent to Tokyo in order to close a stalled business deal worth millions of dollars. He is confident he can cajole a Korean woman who is holding up the deal. Back in Japan, he visits his father's home, where he catches up with his grandmother, the elderly Sunja. I just butchered that. Sunja. And his father, who's an owner of a Pachinko parlor, and his father's girlfriend.
Episode 2. Back in 1930s, Yeongdo. Oh God, I hope I said that right.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Tensions between Japanese immigrants and Korean natives are intense, and Sunja's mother begs her daughter not to walk around unaccompanied. But what do you know? Sunja dismisses her and is almost immediately assaulted near the market by a group of young Japanese men who are within moments of raping her before the market broker, aka Hansu, appears and saves her. In the 1930s, Sunja and Hansu become closer as they share details about their dreams, some of their history, and opinions about the world. Hansu lures Sunja out to the woods for mushrooms foraging. His actual intention is to sexually assault her, which he does very awkwardly. That was a very long scene.
But yeah.
Okay. In 1989, Solomon begins to immerse himself in the business culture of the Tokyo offices beneath and beside Tom, Andrews, and Naomi.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Sunja nurses her sister-in-law Kyuki as she reminisces about her past. Solomon's father, the owner of a Pachinko arcade, secures a massive loan to expand his operations. Solomon's bid to the Korean woman in pursuit of his business deal is refused, and Hannah, his missing childhood friend / maybe stepsister now, confusingly, inexplicably calls him at work and taunts him about knowing things.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Episode 3, Sunja realizes she is pregnant because, of course, upon telling Hansu the news, she learns that he won't be marrying her because he's already married and the father of 3 daughters. Piece of shit, bastard! When he offers to make her his mistress, she rejects him. Good on you! She then runs home to tell her mother, but is interrupted by the collapse of a guest. His name is Isa, and he is a Christian from Pyongyang on his way to Osaka. Isa has tuberculosis, and despite the risks of contagion, they mend him back to full health, where he overhears the heartbreaking discussion between Sonja and her mother about her pregnancy. So, like the good Christian he is, he offers to marry Sonja and give her a chance to start anew in Osaka. She agrees. Now, back in the 1980s, Sonja finds that Kyung-hee has passed away in the night. They hold a funeral, and she agonizes over what to do with her ashes. Solomon asks her to visit the Korean woman in Tokyo who refuses to sell her plot of land with him, which I thought was kind of skeezy, but we'll get into that in a few moments, I'm sure. Sunja agrees, and when they arrive, the two old ladies bond over their shared experiences as Koreans in Japan. When Sunja cries over the loss of her sister-in-law, the landowner scolds Solomon, and his response is to yell at her that he's not trying to steal anything from her. He's giving her 1 billion yen for her piece of property in Tokyo, and that he believes the time has come for the Japanese to settle up their debts to the Koreans. When he returns to his office, he learns the woman has accepted the offer and receives another mysterious phone call from Hana. Sonja decides she is taking Kyung-hee's ashes to Korea. So she's going back home.
Yay. Okay, episode 4. Back in 1930s Korea, Isaac and Sunja prepare for their upcoming nuptials. Hansu confronts Sunja. His resentment quickly turns to violence when she says she has heard rumors about what he does in Japan. Despite the priest's protests, Sunja and Isaac are married, and Sunja tearfully says goodbye to her friends, home, and most devastating, her mother. When on the ship for Japan, Sunja becomes feverish and Isaac goes to get her some water. While he searches the ship, he meets a crew of Korean men who have been hired as miners to work in dangerous Japanese coal mines. On the first-class deck above, an opera singer stops mid-aria and starts to sing in Korean, to the horror of the Japanese first-class passengers and the delight of the passengers below deck. Abruptly, the song ends. The singer has taken a steak knife to her own neck. Back in 1989, Solomon prepares to sign the contract to buy the land from the Korean lady. But instead of signing, she tells the story of her father, a miner in Japan who was fired for going on strike. She recalls that the Japanese used to call Koreans cockroaches who ought to be pounded into the ground. She asks if Solomon's grandmother was sitting there, would he tell her to sign? Solomon tells the landowner in Korean that she shouldn't sign. All of the Japanese men standing around them watch on in confusion as she leaves the room. But they're certain that it had something to do with Solomon, who, quote unquote, couldn't be trusted due to his Korean nationality. Solomon rushes outside, strips off his suit, and begins dancing to a Subway band's cover of the Cure song In Between Days. Okay. Meanwhile, older Sunja makes her journey back to her homeland with her son. When they arrive in Busan in a taxi, she abruptly jumps out and makes her way to the surf, where she starts crying and laughing in delight.
God, I love that. I love the way that ended. The discussion begins with our history with K-dramas.
Oh my God.
Rita, when did you first start watching K-dramas?
So long ago that I actually can't really remember which one it was. I think it was like the noughties, like the around like 2008 or something.
Oh, wow.
I think it might have been like Coffee Prince or something.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was really into J-dramas. Oh, the irony.
Yeah.
And just sort of switched over. I was like, oh, but I've watched Chinese dramas. I've watched Taiwanese dramas. Like, I will watch anything that is slightly soapy. Yeah, so I'm like very steeped in the genre. I know all the tropes and the formulas and all that stuff. What about you? When did you cross over to the dark side?
I didn't start watching K-dramas until I want to say it was it last year?
Oh my God.
I know, right? You have to remember, it's like I didn't discover BTS until we were, well into the pandemic. It was when Butter came out that I discovered BTS. And so I went...
Not even one of their better songs.
I know, right? I wound up going way down the rabbit hole with BTS, and it was, I think it was one of our podcasts where you had mentioned something about, or it was a chat we were having where you had mentioned going into a K-drama montage. And I was thinking to myself, what the hell does that mean?
Now you know.
Well, yeah, I then wandered onto Netflix, and the show that they were really putting some ad market into was Business Proposal. And so that was my very first K-drama, and was it a good one? Because it was absolutely perfect. It ticked off all of the boxes for me. The rich man, poorer woman trope, the, of course, somewhat problematic boss employee trope.
There was like a real phase, I think, when you've been watching long enough.
Yeah.
You'll realize there's always like
whole ton of them. Yes.
Of like, no, but they go through phases of like, at the moment, K-dramas are all about bosses and their employees.
Yeah.
There was a phase where everybody had like, that condition where you can't recognize faces.
Yes. Yeah. It's like face blindness, which I had never heard of at all until I started watching K-dramas. And then it was
wait a second.
Okay, there's like 4 of them that I've watched now where they've had face blindness. But Business Proposal is a pretty hilarious one where a woman who works at a food company agrees to go on a blind date for her friend. Because her friend doesn't want to go, of course. And so she winds up meeting this gentleman who just so happens to be the president of said food company that she works for.
Of course.
Anyhow, he's being pressured by his grandfather to get married and is going to have him go on a bunch of blind dates in order to find someone suitable. And so what does the president do? He says, okay, I went out with the first one. I'm going to marry her. And, hijinks ensue from there. But oh my gosh, what an incredibly charming show. I binged it like nobody's business, and I have not been safe since. You are the one that is habitually warning me not to start watching a new K-drama that comes out that hasn't released all of the episodes that is actually running live on both Netflix or as well as over in Korea. And I invariably ignore that and start watching a show that I have to sit and wait week after week for 2 episodes each week. And meanwhile, my life is just spiraling down the drain in the meantime.
Because that's the thing about K-dramas. They will leave you on a cliffhanger.
Oh my God.
You'll be dying. So
oh my God.
It's just not worth putting yourself
No,
through the
it
emotional
isn't.
trauma.
It isn't. But do I stop? No.
No.
But so anyhow, that's how I wound up getting sucked into these dramas, and they've just been such a delight.
I think what's interesting about this show is that, it's not actually very similar to
no.
your typical K-drama. You don't have the overabundance of inserted music while people moodily look at each other. It's actually, I was like very struck by how little music is in this show. A lot of the moments are played out like, oh my God, like the sex.
Oh.
Just in complete abject silence, so you can hear all of the awkward noises, and you're like, oh my God, no. Where can we put in some BTS or something, please? I don't want to,
Just anything, please. Some mood music here would be really, really nice.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think that there's definitely like an American feel to also like the editing as well, because there's not like those scenes where everything is slowed down exponentially. Yes. Oh my God. I was thinking about that scene where Isaac and Hansu cross paths. I was like, if that was in your typical K-drama, that would have been slowed, that shoulder brush would have been slowed down 17 times as the song played.
Yes.
And they would have really emphasized that moment.
Oh my God.
I think this show is kind of like a weird fusion between your typical Korean tropes and then also your kind of Americanized storytelling techniques, which I think makes it sort of fascinating. I'm like, what are you? You're your own unique little thing.
Yes.
So what was your familiarity with Pachinko before you watched it?
I had heard a couple of references to it, on, the various different K-drama YouTubes that talk about the various different shows that are coming out or have been out or are recommended or, whatever. And so I had heard a couple of references, but, it wasn't until I think we were talking about it that I kind of started nosing around to find out more about it. And I'm glad that we're doing this now because it sounded like a really great story. And so I was really excited to see it come up on our list to do.
Yeah. I mean, I had stocked the book a lot and I figured it was a very popular book when it came out. And I was always like reading the back going, yeah, this looks good. I'll read it one day. But I had no idea it was a TV show until we got this podcast commissioned. I would say that like Apple TV shows tend to go over my head in general. Like a new Apple TV show comes out, I'm like, what? Never heard of it. Like, if you're not an Apple girly, and I've
which you are definitely not.
As a European, I do not understand the Apple thing. And I went through like so much trouble trying to like creating an account, signing in.
Oh, I'm sure.
Then I realized the show was no longer available on the UK version.
Which is just
Apple TV.
Why Apple? Why?
Thank you, Apple, because they make it look like type it in. You've created your account. You go to watch Pachinko. No longer available. So Thank you, Apple.
Oh, that was
basically baiting me. They made me sign up.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, great. Now what do I do? Well, hopefully
now I have to cancel this fucking account.
I was going to say, I hope you canceled. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and then full disclosure, after watching like half of the first episode, I was like, I'm getting this audiobook. I need to know what the fuck happened in the book. So I'm now listening to it obsessively like it's my crack.
Well, I just started the audiobook last night, as a matter of fact. And so I think I'm only on like chapter 3. So yeah, I have a long ways to go. But I couldn't help but assume that when I saw the post that you posted on Instagram about, when your audiobook reaches a sex scene and you're on a bus, I was thinking to myself, Pachinko? Is she listening to Pachinko?
Yes.
Oh boy. So
Pachinko.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know that I want to be listening to this in public. Because it's not like the fun, sexy sex scenes you get in your romance novels.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, girl, Sinja, girl, that's... No, run away. He doesn't like you. Anyway,
yeah. Well, I mean, the way that they wound up filming and shooting the scene, the sex scene in, was it just episode 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was episode 2.
Right at the end. It was quite the ending.
Right at the end, it just goes to black. And it was just like, I feel so uncomfortable right now.
It really, oh my God, but it's actually so much more traumatic when you listen to it.
Oh, God.
Where,
God.
we'll get into why I think that it's worse, but okay.
Okay.
What did you think after seeing the very first episode?
Oh my God. I was just like, okay, I'm in. I'm all in. I am all in. If I had to give you any more money for this, you would have it. And it turns out I did in the form of a credit on Audible. But yeah, I mean, I was totally hooked after the first episode and wondering to myself if I was going to be able to be disciplined enough to stop watching by the time I got to the fourth episode. Yeah, because it was a close one. I really wanted to continue watching after the end of episode 4.
I mean, we decided on stopping at episode 4 in a kind of arbitrary way, but I feel like it was a really good point to stop.
Absolutely.
I'm not much further along than this in the book. I think I'm like midway
Didn't you say you were on like chapter 20 something?
I know, but there's like 50-something chapters.
Holy.
Like, this is a long-ass book.
Oh, man. Okay.
Anyway, after seeing the first episode, I similarly was like, where has the show been all my life? Why have I not watched it sooner? Then I remembered it was Apple's fault and they were trying to keep it away from me.
Yes.
I was just like blown away and like immediately engaged with the characters. And I was surprised that I liked even the 80s parts of the show as much as I did.
Yeah, same here.
And it covered a lot of thematic ground that really interests me. You know, I love your family saga, legacy, trauma being passed through generations, cliches. Like, yes, this is my specific shit.
This is my jam.
And also, I just wanted to mention, this is another show with time jumps.
Oh,
can you
Lord.
believe?
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, didn't we just finish one of these things? But you know something? These have not been any way, shape, or form as painful.
Yeah, I think it's done much better.
Yeah.
No, full shade maybe at Queen Charlotte for not doing what this show does, which I think they always try to link what they're showing in the past and echo it in the future. They give us a lot of older Sunja, so she's not just randomly like, 5 seconds at the end of the episode to remind you she still exists.
Right.
And I think there's much more connection.
Mm-hmm.
I love, for example, that we saw how moved Sunja was eating the Korean rice. And then the next episode, we see her eating the same rice on her wedding day and the significance it had for her and why that was so moving for her. And it's just like, that's good fucking writing.
Yeah. I mean, just beautiful. I mean, the whole idea, the scene when her mom goes and she gets that rice for her daughter's wedding. I was almost in tears. Yeah. And that it almost felt like the person that was giving her the rice was almost in tears. Because here is this woman who is so well known in the neighborhood, who is having to bid her only child farewell, and without any real hope of ever seeing her again. And this was like one of the last things that she could do for her was, for her wedding meal, give her the traditional white rice, which none of the Koreans were allowed to eat because it was all reserved for the Japanese. And if any had gone missing, there would have been hell to pay. Just so moving.
Layers of metaphor there
as
well about the occupation and the Koreans sort of trying to cling on to this idea of their motherland and her having to say goodbye to that, but still being able to like have this moment of connection to her country before she leaves. I mean, it's just so good. Yeah. And it was one of my favorite parts of the book. So I was like, oh, thank God they kept that. Because
good.
The fucking rice thing is so important to me. Yeah. I think what we should mention as well is that the book doesn't have all these time jumps. It's in chronological order. So we go from the 1930s. Part 2 that I'm currently in is during World War II to the 60s. I don't know what happens in the 60s, but I'm excited to find out. And then I assume part 3 or part 4, I haven't got that far, will be in the 80s.
Will be the 80s. Yeah.
I assume. So I think the fact they've done this and they've intersliced all the parts together and connected this sort of like mosaic thing and created like this new show is in a really successful way is like really impressive.
Yeah, they have done a masterful job of storytelling with this. I am thoroughly impressed. And just I can't wait to finish watching it, although I kind of don't want it to end.
Well, I have news on that. There's a season 2 coming. I don't know what? How they're doing that, because
because it was so damn popular, but oh my God, this is awesome.
Well, that's good for us, but I'm also like, wait, if it's a book and it's like concluded, they must not get all the way through the book. Anyway, we'll talk about that next week. Okay.
Okay.
So let's delve into all the storylines.
Oh my gosh. Sunja in 1930s Korea. I thought that the story of her conception and the, going to the shaman and, that whole scene and, the fact that here is this sweet, sunny little girl, that is born to this family, and a family of individuals who, were probably the way that, really. Exactly. The way that they're described, it's like she, the mother is, kind of young and frail and
Orphaned.
and orphaned, and the son, has a cleft palate and a bad foot. And, it's like, but, the two of them wind up coming together and, trying to have this family. And it's clear that the mother, loves her husband. She describes him as being, a gentle man. And which, thankfully, I'm sure that it could have wound up becoming a train wreck, but, the two of them actually have a fairly happy marriage, but have not been able to have, any of their children live, out of infancy. But now they have this little girl, named Sunja, and she is just a little firecracker. I just loved little Sunja.
Oh my God. Amazing little actress. I love the scene where she goes diving.
Yes.
And her father is freaking the fuck out because he can't hold his breath as long as she can.
Exactly.
And she pops up like, Daddy!
She's like, look, I did it!
I was like, okay, not worth the heart attack. But
yes. And she brings home an absolute delicacy for the family to have, a great big abalone that the family is able to have for a lovely dinner, and it's at that dinner that the stupid drunk dude winds up saying all kinds of horrible things about the Japanese. And it's just, you just start to see, his shirt slowly turning red.
Oh, honey.
It's like, okay, he's got the red shirt. It's like, dude, you just, bye-bye. Tomorrow's not going to be a good day for you, man.
I thought, this choice to start the story where it does is interesting because, in the book, it starts much earlier with, in the late 1800s with the backstory of Sunja's father's parents and how they came to get, their two other sons died and they only had this one son left who had a cleft palate, and there was all this, they had no hope that he would ever get married, and I thought that echoed Sunja's later story really nicely. But I think by shifting the focus to being about Sunja's conception and how she was longed for, they've really, I think, explained some of the Sunja's personality quirks, because she was so longed for and loved in a way that was not really very normal for that era, especially because she's a little girl and she was obviously doted on and quote unquote spoiled. And I think that parenting style has been echoed throughout all the different generations.
Yes. You
can see she grew up to sort of echo her father, she specifically said to Isaac in that noodle bar scene, that how much she's going to protect her child and love that child no matter what. And I think that's sort of the link that binds all of these generations together, is that just devotion to their child. So you've got several generations of that, and she ends up saying she raised Solomon as well. So they've all sort of got that kind of link throughout the generations, and that's really what I think, in a way, Sunja's father, I don't know what the fuck his name is.
Yeah.
He sort of created this dynamic that has still being set in motion, for generations, and the link ends in the 80s, really.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, if Solomon has a kid, he'll be echoing that as well.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about a piece of shit.
Oh, yeah. Who is played by none other than
Dreamy.
Mr. Uber Dreamy, Yi Min-ho. He is a really fantastic Korean actor. But man, does he play a dick in this one.
Very handsome.
Very
I want to shove him off
handsome, styling dude. And, it's anybody with two eyes would have locked eyes with him because he is as presented in the show, a very striking, handsome man. But he is as big of an asshole as you can get. Did you see it coming?
Kind of, yeah. There were not good vibes from him when he was yelling at the Koreans.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you may be treating her nice because you want something from her.
But you are not on the side of the angels here, sir.
No.
There's a smarminess going on here that is not going to wind up boding well for our dear heroine.
I don't think I can trust anybody that dresses like a Chicago gangster, I think is also the thing. Like he just looks smarmy.
Yeah.
I mentioned this earlier, but the book's dynamic is slightly different from what we see in the show.
Okay.
So almost immediately he comes off as kind of a groomer. He does all these things like, he does save her, but then he immediately creates this dynamic with her where he asks her to call him her big brother. No, he starts bringing her candy and telling her to eat it in secret and telling her to keep their meetings a secret. They have this whole secret code situation so no one can find out about them, and there's just so many red flags. Red flags were everywhere. So by the time by the time he was inviting her to go mushroom picking, I knew in my head, like, this whole thing has been him seeing a very young girl and knowing he wants to sleep with her and basically manipulating the whole situation to get her attention and get her alone. He definitely does the whole mushroom thing so that he can get her in the forest where they're in private. And he essentially assaults her on the forest floor, and she is weeping through the whole thing.
Oh, God.
He doesn't, I think,
look
after her or explain what's happening. And I think there's a sense of confusion with her because she doesn't really know what's happening. And she definitely doesn't know the consequences of what's happening to her. And obviously we need to talk about the age difference because she's just 16 years old and he's almost 40.
Ugh.
And then he has the balls to be like, oh, you knew what this was. It's like, no.
It's like, no, she didn't. No, she didn't.
Know the consequences of these decisions that you are forcing upon her. I just find the whole thing so uncomfortable. And then watching the scenes where the priest and like everyone around her sort of blames her for falling for this situation, and I'm like, she was a child. I mean, the fact that in the third episode at the very beginning when she is helping her mother getting the meal put together, and clearly she's having issues with morning sickness, but she's not thinking that that's what it is. It isn't until one of the other female servants there mentioned something about, her period and, didn't you miss it last month? That it's like the light bulb goes on. And of course. I also love that somebody she's living with noticed and she didn't. I know. Think that speaks to like the little community of women they have going on there, where like they're also enmeshed in each other's lives, that she can remember that she missed her period,
right?
And
right.
also that speaks to just how secret this relationship has been. Like, her friend knows she's missed her period, but doesn't know she's been fucking this 40-year-old for the past few months.
Right.
Like, and that dynamic is also incredibly worrying. Like, I'm like, girl, the flags are so red.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, and the way that the show depicts it, you know, it appears that, you know, once the deed is done, that, you know, it happens again, and it is much more consensual by that point, you know, they have started this physical relationship, and so, you know, in her mind, you know, of course, she doesn't even think that there will be a question that he will marry her, you know, because that's how, you know, when she approaches him with the news, you know, she's like, well, you know, we'll go see my mother soon, you know, because, you know, if we marry quickly, then, you know, it's not going to be an issue, you know, and it's just kind of like, oh, girl.
It's like, but of course she thinks that because he's been deceptive. Like, the fact that he's
absolutely.
He's like surprised that she would think he would marry her. It's like, of course she thinks that because you've been lying about the fact that you're married and have all these children. Like, I find his shock at her disingenuous. Like, he used that as a manipulating tactic, and now he's there using it against her. And then that line about, like, oh, you want me to marry you because nobody else will have you.
Yeah.
Absolutely devastating. What a piece of shit.
Yeah. just broke my damn heart. I was like, well, okay, I guess you gotta play a baddie at some point in your career.
Yeah. It's but also really ironic because it's like, oh, nobody will marry her? Wait a week, hon.
Guess what? There's a new guy in town.
Speaking of.
Yes. Speaking of. Oh, gosh. To be honest, it was like almost too convenient that he showed up so quickly. After, you know, all of the, you know, oh, God, well, what are you going to do? Oh, my God. Blah, blah. Oh, okay. Who is this? Ta-da! Problem solved. Although, you know, it's not as if it is immediately problem solved. You know, it is, first of all, he shows up and basically passes out in the courtyard. And so there's a doubt of whether or not he's going to survive.
Honestly, what a drama.
And once he does, then, you know, with him overhearing the conversation between Sonjia and her mom about the pregnancy, you know, he immediately shifts into, so, have you thought about giving up the kid? You know, because, you know, I am a Christian missionary and there are plenty of people that want children, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. And it's just like, dude, you read the room. Read the room. And clearly, she sets him straight. Because, you know, as soon as he understands, you know, who he's dealing with, does he decide, well, let me see if this will work. And so I thought it was very noble of him to do this. But
you know, the moment I knew I loved him was when she says, like, no, actually, I'm going to keep the kid. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And
yes.
I was like, a man? Saying, apologizing and admitting he was wrong?
Yes, in saying, you know, I know books.
One of those?
I know books, but I don't know people.
Oh my God.
Very well.
Self-awareness as well. What a king.
I know, right? It was like, swoon, okay. Hello, you. So So yeah, I was glad that he wound up coming into the picture.
You know, I am a sucker for a Sam Khan.
Oh, of course.
And he ticks all those boxes. I think he's just delightful and very... It's amazing the contrast between Hansu and Isaac. That scene where they're discussing the suit.
The suit,
in
yes.
episode 4, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I was kind of like, Hansu,
I
what
was
a shifty little bitch you are, going in there, knowing he doesn't know who the fuck you are, and talking to him. Like,
yeah,
just smarmy.
And talking to him using this metaphor that, you know, he doesn't have the knowledge of who you are to understand precisely what it is that you're saying. Honestly, I kind of wanted to say something like, you know, that once he found out, you know, who this dude was, that he went back and just like beat the crap out of him. but
he's too much of a Christian for that.
Exactly. He would turn the other cheek. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was such a good, powerful scene, even though they were doing that annoying thing they do in movies where people look at each other through mirrors and I'm like, normal people turn around. Ugh.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
That was powerful, I think, because they managed to weave in the fact that he's a Christian from the north of Korea. And I love that because it allows avenues to explore the resistance movement that was happening and how he lost his brother to it.
Yeah.
So, like, not only is he a good egg, but I think he's genuinely interesting in his own right because his perspective is, like, very different from someone like Hansu, but also from, like, Sunja's experiences because she doesn't have that kind of relationship with the political movement going on that I think we'll explore a little bit more as the season goes on. And yeah, just what a handsome man.
Very handsome man. Yum. Okay, so Sonja's relationship with her mom. I think we've talked a little bit about it, but
I love that mother. I
do too.
I'd die for her.
I do too. She is really. It has been lovely watching her and Sonja together. The last episode basically just ripped my heart out. You know, and it's. You were talking about how quickly you were able to get engaged with the characters and, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, it's like if you're able to get to the point where seeing a mother and daughter separate for the last time basically makes you ugly cry after, you know, 4 episodes. They've done something remarkable. And I think I would have been ugly crying even if that had happened in, you know, like the second episode. The two of them, the two of them just have a beautiful relationship with one another. Yeah.
And I think I love the contrast between her relationship with her father, who was, you know, the nice guy. He was sort of the saintly, caring, smiley dad, and then you've got sort of the bad guy in the parenting dynamic where she's much more stern and she's less openly emotional, but she's just as tender and loving. And I think that's what made that so much more heartbreaking because she was constantly trying to smother those emotions. So when they came out at the end, I was just like a weeping mess with her.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I definitely love that. And I also think there is just like this obvious metaphor of between like the mother and the motherland and saying goodbye to both at the same time. And I think by coming home at the end of episode 4 and standing in the surf, I think part of it was like the connection with her mother as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sad.
Oh gosh,
Okay.
let's not
move
start
on.
getting quiet. Let's move on. Let's move on.
1980s. Let's talk about Solomon because
Yes,
I actually really like this character.
I do too.
He's such a little confused little sweetheart.
Oh my gosh, it's just like, dude, when you have your awakening to all of the bullshit that you've been dealing with, it's what we saw in the final, or in this fourth episode, where he's stripping off that suit and dancing in the rain to the Cure. It's like, yeah, you're shaking it off. Good for you,
that
because
is
that
what I call Kevin Baconing. The emotions are too much. You have to dance it out.
Yes. But it's like, man, when you have that awakening, when you realize that, and it's not as if he wasn't aware of the inequities. It's just okay, I'm not going to play this game anymore with these assholes.
It's going into survival mode of where you have to put yourself first and think about what's best for your everyday survival versus, the heaped on generational trauma. It's not even really his trauma, because he does face little bits of racism, but not to the extent that his grandmother did. So for him, it feels like, well, why am I carrying around this burden all the time?
Yeah.
It's just dragging me down and all this resentment. And then at the end, I feel like he realized that pretending it wasn't there was also suffocating him. And he let me take this jacket off and dance. But I loved that they showed that scene in New York as well, because I felt like the undertone of that first meeting in it was that, you may be exceptionally good at your job and much better than all of your peers. You aren't a white dude. So
it's like, you're not going to get it.
So we can afford to hold you off from this promotion you've earned for as long as possible. And you just got to keep working harder than everyone else and making us more money. So we're not going to reward you for it. That's your classic glass ceiling. He's smacking right into it.
And, I was feeling every bang that his head was making against that ceiling. Because it is what any person of color, winds up encountering, particularly at that time, that we're dealing with, but in general. It's like the glass ceiling is there, and some folks make it over it and others don't.
But then the ones that make it over it think that it's because they're the exceptional person, and if other people work just as hard, that they can make it too. And it's like, no, not really. That's not how this system works. You're the token. And I thought that they contrasted that nicely with the overt racism of the Japanese, that were just like meeting you and would be like, you hired a fucking Korean? Like, can we trust this bitch? And he would just say it to your face. Like, there's a brazenness to it. And it feels like Solomon is in this lose-lose situation where he's stuck between a culture that will kind of mask their racism, or he has to live in Tokyo where people will just be openly hostile. So it's like, pick your poison. Either way,
either way, you are not one of them. Either way, you're not one of them. Now I have to admit that when he first starts his attempts on getting the Korean woman to sell her land, his first attempt with the square watermelon, I was just like, oh, son, this is not gonna work.
I thought it made sense though, because he's been in America for so long that he thinks like, you know, we'll shove money at her. That'll be the solution to this problem. Because it shows you how disconnected he is from the realities of being Korean in Japan, where he's just like, well, just get over it, you know.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, I did kind of think like, girl, take the money. You know, you go on a nice holiday, you know, you can live it up, move back to Korea, I don't know, get your drink on, and just get out of these Japanese people's faces because they obviously are treating you like shit. But as the more episodes went on, the more I sort of sided with her. It might be she's kind of holding on out of spite, but I felt like her resentment was earned. Like she feels these rich Japanese people have been treating her like shit for all her life. And to let go of her resentment now would be sort of to say that none of the things she suffered mattered and that it can all be wiped clean. At the end, when she didn't sign the paper, I was like, yes, bitch, don't let them have what they want.
No, exactly.
Even though she's giving up 1 billion yen, which
1 billion yen. Oh my God. That was just like, that is a lot of money. A lot of money. But I would be kind of hard pressed to do so as well.
I definitely understood. Like at first, when you first meet her, you're just like, why are you holding on to this shitty piece of land? And then the more you get to know her and you understand her history, it makes perfect sense to you. And I think I love that actress, the scene where she and Sunjia were like just having a little chat in the kitchen and talking about their past. And that was one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I loved
those
that.
Two actresses bounce off each other.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was just actually starting to go down a rabbit hole of the actor who plays Solomon. His name is Chin Ha, and oh my goodness, child was in Hamilton.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yes.
And Jesus Christ Superstar.
I know.
He can sing.
I know. I have to do some Yahoo Google searching stuff. Anyway, so he's just wonderful. I can't wait to see how his character blossoms from this point. So
I do kind of hope that now that he's acknowledged that all of this Japanese versus Korean bullshit as his American boss would say, is there and impacting his life on a daily basis, that he's able to also let go of it in a way that the grandmothers aren't able to, because I think it's also like such an incredible burden to carry around all the time. I do really hope in the end that he finds freedom from it. I mean, you've always got to acknowledge that it's there, but you can't live your life constantly bitter in the same way that this grandmother is, because you know he didn't go through those struggles. It would be one thing if he had experienced that, but he is just hearing about it essentially and dealing with like microaggressions instead, which is like, deal with what you're going through, not with what your parents and grandparents are going through. It's like always the absolute nightmare for childs of immigrants. Oh my God.
Yes.
No, that means
yes. Oh God.
Anyway.
Oh man. Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So Hana is missing. Do we care? Not really.
No. The worst
Not really.
storyline. Who is this bitch?
It's like we have no idea, and oh God, what tangent is this going to take us down?
It's not an interesting one. I mean, maybe the last 4 episodes will be about him trying to find her, but like...
But, you know, I don't need it, because there's plenty of other stuff going on in this show. But yeah, I don't know who Hana is. I don't know...
Work out what the hell's going on. Like, is that his stepsister?
I don't know.
Or his ex-girlfriend? Or
it has this weird feeling like it is an ex-girlfriend, but but also it could be a sibling, and I don't know. It's just a little too confusing. But
I like Hannah's mum though. Like, she's an
yeah,
interesting character.
Me too. But
I love how she does her makeup as well. Like, choices mine.
But yeah, so I don't know. I guess we're gonna find out soon. Maybe, because I don't know.
Will.
She got hung up on the last time she called. So,
You know what this is giving me the vibe of? You know, in Forrest Gump, whenever Jenny used to call Forrest.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people that hates Jenny.
Yeah.
Because she went through some
shit. Yeah. She went through some shit.
I also, did think, like, ew, don't get with Forrest. You don't love him, really.
It's like no.
Convenient. This is not a Forrest Gump podcast.
No.
I didn't like that storyline in Forrest Gump, and I don't like it here.
There we go. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go to 1980s Sunya in Japan. Did she give the name again?
Kyung-hee?
Yes. Kyung-hee, did she give Kyung-hee an overdose?
That's my question to you.
I don't know.
She was grinding up those pills.
Yeah.
And then she said they were bitter, so she's obviously at all of them. But I didn't know if that was like her just giving her the medication she was refusing to take, or she killed the bitch.
I was thinking that it was just giving her the medication that she was supposed to take, because I didn't get that that she ate the food and it was like the next day that she died, or what. I didn't catch on to the passage of time that happened between those two moments.
Yeah. I think it was ambiguous, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't clear that was what had happened. So, I think it was just giving her the medicine that, she didn't want to take in the first place. But Katie, my partner Katie, wants to watch this with me. And so I have to, unfortunately, watch episodes 3 and 4 again, with her. So, I'll let you know if, that gets cleared up in my rewatch. But,
it could go either way. I think.
Yeah, I could.
It could have been purposefully ambiguous, because there is, she has cancer. She's clearly depressed. I can see a very good reason for Sunja to maybe put her out of her misery. But then I could also see her, but she was so intent on trying to keep her alive that I don't know if I just completely misread that. That was just me being like, hey, what the fuck happened? Please explain what this was. I thought she had an interesting relationship with her past at first, because she was saying all these things about, it's silly to hold on to the past, and like, oh, this is just some walls, and, to a certain extent, I did agree with her. I was like, she's right, you need to like, just keep moving on, just keep swimming, because that's how you survive. But then I realized it is a survival tactic.
Yeah.
That's how she was able to endure numerous atrocities and tragedies that have befallen her in her life. And I don't think it was a truly honest thought about reflection of how she felt about her relationship with her motherland. And I'm glad she's gone back to Korea. I'm very interested to see how she reacts to all the changes as well. Like when she was standing in the surf, I kept thinking like, oh, look at all those lights. Like, look, there's boats in the distance. Like, it can't look that similar to when you were last there.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, but I just absolutely adored her standing in the surf and just laughing and crying and basically saying, I'm home.
Yeah.
I've come back. I'm home.
The mix of emotions that was of like joy and sadness. Like it's such a perfect reflection of that. I also love that it was raining because it linked her with Solomon as well, who was standing in Tokyo in the rain.
Yes.
I was like, oh, there's this geographical link, but also this kind of like metaphorical link between them, that like the same things are affecting them, and no matter how big the difference is at the end of the day. God, that scene was so good. That was a good ending.
It really was. It really was. And, for being a place where, we chose to break off for this episode of the podcast, it couldn't have been better.
Brilliance on our
I was going to say, we couldn't have planned that one better.
I wonder, do you think does this show come out week by week, or was it dumped in one go?
I don't know. Question that we will have to answer in part 2.
Well, can someone write in if you know the answer?
Yeah, if you know the answer, go for it.
Part of why this works as well is like we're able to do a bit of both. I didn't like binge it all in one go. I watched like one episode or 2 a day. And I think it would work either way if you binged it. Like it all sort of blends together. But if you watch them individually as well, they're all like distinct chapters, and they feel like little mini movies in and of themselves. I just think like amazing. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Favorite characters. Oh man. Really hard to pick. Just a character, a favorite character, because there are so many amazing characters in this.
Maybe we should talk about the like non-main characters.
Okay. As far as if we're going to look at non-main characters, I am going to have to go with the gentleman that plays Isak.
I could consider him main character.
You would? Oh,
yeah.
Well, all right, fine.
He fucking marries her. He's like a big part of.
Yeah, but he is, but he's okay, fine.
You will find he takes more prominence later on in the story, admittedly. But
okay. Let me see. Well, I really loved the mom. I'm sorry. You can ask me for non-main characters, but she's one of my favorite actresses. I thought she was just incredible.
Like, God, you're like 20. How are you playing someone's mom?
I know. But yeah, she is just a wonderful actress. I know that I've seen her in a recent show, but I can't remember which one it was. But I really just loved the love and devotion that she has for her daughter. What all she's willing to do for her daughter. The scene with the rice. I know that it sounds to some folks that haven't watched the show, it will sound like, what's the deal with the rice? But that episode was so incredibly beautiful.
Of all of her love and devotion for her daughter, and also a connection to her home. It's just everything the show is about is the rice.
Yeah.
The rice is everything.
Yeah. And I think the thing that really pulls me with this character is when they were saying goodbye, and I am going to probably get a little emotional about this. It was with the knowledge that she probably would never see her again.
Oh, you know what broke me was when Sunja asked the 2 girls that lived with them, the orphan girls, to look after her mother for her. And then also, God, I don't know her name, but one of the sisters being like, we will never be married.
Yeah.
We're too poor.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen for us. We're just going to end up working at this boarding house the rest of our lives. And like that moment as well was really emotional.
Oh,
when they
God.
both turned their backs and started crying.
Yeah.
Like,
they're both so incredible. Who can pick? I can't pick. You pick. Who was your favorite? I'm turning this over to you. Who you pick?
Well, I really like I like the performance of Jimmy Simpson as Tom Andrews, the crass American.
Oh my God.
Because I feel like you have to be such a generous and dedicated actor to be willing to be the complete dick in the room.
Yes.
Like just the face of American imperialism
yes.
or neo-imperialism in the room.
Yes.
Everyone is sort of like, oh, why are you here? You know? Every time he shows up.
Yes.
It's just like, oh. And like the performance he's giving is so unlikable to its core.
It is just, and it's just so spot on.
His backstory about like never working, always working, and like trying to make more money for his family. I was just like, I mean, I understand that is part of the grind culture of America, but it's not exactly a tragic backstory compared to some of the other characters in the show. So for him to be like pouring out his heart to Solomon, I was just like, oh.
Like tiny little violins playing in the background.
And then his relationship with Naomi seems highly suspect.
Very sus. Very sus.
I find Naomi intriguing. But also there's like this inscrutability about her where I don't really know why she's with someone as unlikable as Tom Andrews unless it's for her own personal gain. Yeah. And also her speaking about living in America and having people try and guess her ethnicity. I was just like, okay, so she has experience of being on the receiving end of some racism, but she's also complaining about it to a Korean. So the irony is, there was just so much nuance going on in that scene, and all the different dynamics. I'm like, oh God. It was just fascinating and awkward and all awful. Some of those 80s scenes can seem really, I don't know,
cringy.
So yeah, but then I also think like, you know, they did that whole thing about the emperor dying and all the newsreel footage from like, oh, he oversaw the Japanese empire, and I thought it was a great way to show the legacy of the events that we're seeing in the 30s and 40s, of how they're still impacting everyday interactions. Like they can't just have a simple conversation about like what it's like to live in America without like all of this hangover from the past. And, you know, to some extent, Tom Andrews being like, can't people just get over it? I understand why he thinks that. Dude. But also like, no, dude, read the room. Like, you cannot just get over it.
It's like, dude, it's like, this is so deep. It is so deep. No, you just can't get over it. It's like someone saying, well, you know, slavery. Can't you just get over it? And like,
it's exactly like that.
Not really.
Not really, because it's ingrained in the everyday culture of this society you lived in. Yeah. And it's a similar situation with Solomon. You know, he's introduced to a Japanese man at his work, and immediately there's suspicion. For nothing other than the fact that he's Korean. Yeah. So, you know, the legacy.
Yes. It just, just can't escape that legacy, man.
I love that I managed to talk so much that I avoided answering the question.
Yeah, you did.
Favorite scenes.
Yes.
I think the scene where Sunja tells her mother she's pregnant and they both start crying and holding each other. She's like, do you understand the life we're going to have? And Sunja, like, she can't even speak. She just sort of unravels.
That was so incredibly powerful. You know, and you know that her mom was, you know, thinking that, you know, her father had so many hopes for what Sonja's life was going to be like. And I know that as she was hearing about, what was happening with her daughter, that she was just seeing, like her husband's hopes and dreams for his daughter just slowly going up in smoke.
It's been and that was really interesting because we've seen where she ends up much later in life, and I think in the end, in the moment he would have been devastated. But if he knew, like, she moves to Japan, she has this whole family, and they're very close and loving, he would, in the end, I think, be very proud of what she's achieved.
Yes, very much so.
It's always that contrast between, like, the moment and then the big picture.
Yep.
That I like that the show does that, I also like that they were having this really intense emotional moment, and then you just cut to Isaac lying in bed, hearing the
yes.
It's like it was amplified in his room with I loved that. I screamed. So
it was good. Like, guys, not alone here. Somebody's listening in. Oh Lord.
And you can see just like the wheels turning in his head. He was like, I shouldn't be listening, but also I now know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The scene that we had of the free diving scene. I loved that scene with her and her father going to the beach, and her free diving and her dad holding his breath at the same time she goes under, and when he's no longer to hold it, he begins the panic, and then all of a sudden there she is. I loved that scene. I loved the scenes with the two of them. I really did.
They're in the boat and he's telling her how much he wants to protect her from the darkness of the world. Oh.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
He's just got great dad energy,
Yeah, sure does. But yeah, that was wonderful. My other favorite scene was, Solomon dancing in the rain. Yeah. I just loved that whole scene.
The joy of that.
Yes.
Also, the episode had been so dark and emotional, and you'd had the scene where that woman fucking kills herself on stage, and then
oh my God,
get this burst of just lightness. It was such relief. I was just like, yes, continue dancing. I don't want any more people to die.
It's like, you just dance, son. You just dance. But yeah, I mean, there are countless wonderful scenes in there. But I know that we've talked about several of them, but I think those are two that still just stand out to me.
And 17 from each episode.
Yeah, and I will say that, with any of these shows, you have the option of skipping the intros.
Oh, I never do.
I never do, because the intro for this show is so good.
And they picked a song, and then they have the English version, the Japanese version, and the Korean version, and they sort of meld into each other.
Yeah.
And you don't really even notice when they sort of merge into each other and everyone's dancing.
Oh, it's just wonderful.
It's just perfect.
Love it.
It also makes me want to play Pachinko, even though I know I lose money. No idea how to play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would suck hugely. I'm terrible at gambling. So, anyway, costumes.
They're all beautiful, but the one that really struck me was actually the opera singer's outfit.
Oh, yes. I was going to say that.
Not only was it just absolutely gorgeous, but after reading the book, they make a point to say that under Japanese rule, white clothing was prohibited. Mm-hmm. So to have her all in white, flouting this rule as a form of resistance against the occupying force was just
was wonderful.
Chef's kiss.
Yes.
Subtlety.
I just loved that because it was such a striking departure from everything that we were seeing in that scene. That there was, that everything that we were seeing was kind of dark and rough and coarse. And here she comes dressed in white silk. It was just exquisite. Even though he's a dick, Hansu looks fine in his clothing. His costume's beautiful. Oh yeah. There's something like questionable character, but you're gonna love his clothes.
Yeah. The waistcoats. I mean,
yeah. I mean, just really.
And the hats, the angled hats. It's like proper gangster. Yeah.
Yeah, just really beautiful costumes. I mean, I love all of the hanbok. I think that the traditional Korean garments for women are so beautiful. And
we saw them throughout the season, so you get your summer version, and at the end we got the puffy coat version.
The puffy coat.
Michelin Man.
Yes, the puffy coat version of it. That was awesome. I love. I think that's the thing with any of the. And one of the reasons why I love period drama so much are, all the costumes, and the beautiful, period garments that they're wearing. But I really liked those. I am hoping that we will see some of the. I'm assuming that we will costumes in Japan. From the 30s and 40s as we get into the next episodes. Looking forward to those as well.
Yeah, we're going to get some fun World War II times. And I say that ironically, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see just how, who is dressing quote unquote Western.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Koreans have adopted this style because of Japanese influence, and how it's really a marker of status and wealth and everything. Just there's so much to be said about the costuming details here, because it speaks to their position in society, as well as just looking sexy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Location. My favorite location was definitely the Busan coastline when Shinjo was splashing about. I was like, that's important.
Yeah. I, with my recent dive into South Korean culture and just seeing some of the scenery from around that country, this was the first time that I think I've had the opportunity to see Busan. We see a whole lot of Seoul.
Busan, but I don't think that you see any of Busan.
No.
Zombies everywhere.
But, we see a lot of countryside in some of the K-dramas, and you see a lot of Seoul and, the mountains and that kind of thing. But this was... I've seen more of Jeju Island than I have of Busan, I think.
I wonder if we're going to get a Jeju Island episode. There's always a Jeju Island episode. Actually,
yeah, of course.
Guess who's from Jeju Island?
Who?
Hansu.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
That's right.
We might get a Jeju Island episode. He goes on holiday.
Oh, well, it's not. It's not a Korean drama if you don't have an episode of Jeju. I love Busan. I also love seeing Tokyo and Osaka. I studied a lot of I studied Japanese when I was in college for a couple years, and which is why the pronunciations for Japan they're not bothering me at all.
What
But so I studied Japanese language and culture for a couple years in college, and so that's something that I've always loved. Funny thing, never really studied the Japanese history, and so learning a lot about the problematic, had a very high level glossed over understanding of Japanese history, including World War II, but, doing a deep dive into Japanese history anytime between the closure of the country back in I want to say it was 1600s, 1700s.
I mean, that's mostly a myth, by the way, because they were doing a lot of trading with Asian countries.
Yes.
So I don't
closed to the west. They were closed to the west. The only place that was allowed to trade, only Western country allowed to trade, were I believe the Portuguese.
I think when they were quote unquote closed was the Dutch. They quote unquote closed because the Portuguese missionaries pissed them off.
Right.
Classic Portuguese missionaries. To be fair, Portugal, terrible.
Yeah.
I think there is a real need for everyone to learn about this period of history, because so much of what we learn about Japan is sort of like the glossy, shiny version that glosses over
some of the really horrible
imperial
shit.
Fascism bits. It's like Japan shows up in World War II reenactments, and you're just like, well, how did they get to that point?
Yeah.
So there's a whole history in that region of Japan's imperialist actions that I think Western media just doesn't ever show. So I think Pachinko is a particularly good avenue into that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it really encompasses a lot of the actions that were happening across the region from like China and everything. I hope we get to see some, when she goes to Osaka, that we get to see like other like Chinese communities in Osaka and like all the other, because what happened was that they basically stole all the resources in your classic imperialist way from those regions, and everybody ended up emigrating to Japan to try and make some money, and it ended up just kind of low-key destroying the communities that were left behind in other Asian countries.
It's pretty dark.
It'd be interesting to see like a fusion of all these different Asian communities in Osaka, because I think she was in like a small, tiny fishing village / on an island, I think, just out of Busan. So it would be interesting to see her interacting with like a wider world, because they made a real point of Hansu being like, there's a whole world out there, and for her to be able to experience that would, I think, be very fun for her.
Yes.
God, we got off track. Was there anything you didn't like?
I think we talked about a lot of it. As we were just talking about some of the historical issues that occurred back in that time with Japanese imperialism, and not only that, but just the way that people were treated, and like the way women were treated. And I'm sure that we will wind up touching on another very dark period of history where we will be addressing the issue of comfort women.
That was mentioned in the book. Oh.
Yeah. So
I remember Hansu tells her, like, if somebody approaches you in the market and offers you a job, don't take it. And she's like, what are you talking about? And then in the back of my head, I was like, he knows about comfort women.
Yeah. It's like, well, what are you basically turning her into, you asshole? But anyway.
It's okay because he's not Japanese. So, that's the only difference.
Okay.
He can exploit her, but
he can exploit her, but no. But I have a feeling that we will be getting into that very dark period of history in the last 4 episodes, I'm sure. So it's going to be hard seeing that, but I know that it's something that, if we're going to do this show justice, and not deal with things at a very glossy level, we're going to wind up having to deal with those things. But, we'll see. There's a lot of dark history that we could very well wind up encountering.
I mean, the whole of bloody World War II's yet to happen, I think. That's going to be... It's going to be a time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, for me, I definitely think, as much as I find, the sexual assault stuff difficult to watch and all of the racism and even things like watching Sanjua say goodbye to her country. All of it very triggering for me as an immigrant. Find all of it resonates with me emotionally, and that can be quite confronting. But there's almost so much emotion it brings out of me that I appreciate that it's moving me, even though it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is a negative is the Hannah storyline, because it literally elicits nothing but just annoyance.
Yeah. At this point, it's like, okay, I don't really know how this ties into the story, so I'm finding it difficult to have any kind of care or desire about it. That could very well change with the next episode. Who knows? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so how many bowls of white rice out of 5?
I'm giving this bad boy 5.
Samies, and if you're surprised...
5.
At this point, you haven't been paying attention. Okay.
This is a fantastic show. People, you need to watch it. It's really, really good.
Yes, we cannot recommend it.
No, we can't.
We love it.
So, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week discussing the last 4 episodes of the show. Delia, we want to know what you think. What do you think of this podcast, and how are we doing?
I sent her an email, and we're going to read her out in a special Delia inbox section next week, where she discusses everything she enjoyed about the show.
Awesome. Awesome.
Don't
I can't
worry,
wait.
Delia, that is happening, but there were some spoilies, and I thought we'll hold off until next week for the spoilers.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Well, if any of the rest of you would like to get involved in the discussion, then please email us at inthebooksnetwork@gmail.com and follow us on social media at inthebooksnetwork for more fun period drama takes from us. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We will see you all next time. Annyeong! Bye!
Bye!